I woke up to the faint sound of my laptop being opened. It was 2:46 a.m. The house was dark silent, but someone was in my room. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady. From the corner of the room, the soft click of my trackpad echoed louder than it should have. I recognized the subtle creak of the office chair, the one no one but me ever used. And then came the unmistakable tap of keys being typed. It was Rick, my stepfather. I had suspected something like this for weeks, but now I had proof. I had set the trap carefully, a custom tracking software installed, screen recording enabled, and my webcam set to silently turn on and stream everything directly to my phone. All he had to do was try something, and he did. I could hear him muttering under his breath. My heart pounded against my chest, but I didn't move. He thought I was asleep. He thought I was stupid. He had no idea. When the screen flickered on, I imagined the look on his face. He must have seen it. Himself. Staring back from the webcam feed being recorded in real time. Not just the screen capture, but his very face. In my room, at nearly 3 a.m., trying to access my financial accounts, my inheritance, money my mother had left for me before she died just 6 months ago. Money Rick had no right to. And yet here he was, whispering curses at the keyboard, moving the mouse toward the online investment login, typing with deliberate speed like he'd practiced. He had. Earlier that day, he'd casually asked me if I still use my birthday as part of my passwords. Just curious, he'd said with a crooked smile. I'd laughed it off, but I wasn't laughing now. I stayed still, eyes closed. But I was wide awake, recording, waiting, planning. Because tonight wasn't just about catching Rick in the act, it was about everything that had led to this. About being ignored, disrespected, and underestimated by the people who were supposed to be my family. Rick thought this would be easy. He thought I would sleep through it all. But what he didn't know, what he never even considered, was that I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Watching him, studying him, setting the exact kind of trap people like him never see coming. As the soft hum of the computer fan continued, I opened my eyes just a crack, just enough to see the glow of the screen lighting up his face, focused, greedy. He had no idea I was watching, and he would never forget what came next. My mother passed away 6 months ago. Cancer, quick and cruel. She was only 58. After the funeral, everything felt quiet in a way that was too loud. She had always been the glue of our small, complicated family. When she was gone, the pieces didn't just fall apart, they turned cold. I had been living in Seattle, working remotely as a freelance UX designer. When Mom got sick, I moved back to her hometown in Idaho to help care for her. Rick, my stepfather, was already acting like the head of everything by the time I arrived. He married my mom 10 years ago. He was charming at first, too charming. The kind of guy who always had a big smile, loud stories, and a firm handshake. But the cracks showed early. He wasn't cruel exactly, just dismissive, especially with me. I was the quiet one, the artsy type, the sensitive girl. I didn't go to law school like my stepsister Sophie. I didn't network at country clubs or talk about investment strategies at dinner. I worked from my laptop. I kept to myself, which made me in Rick's eyes invisible. Sophie, his daughter from his first marriage, was always the shining star. Tall, polished, ambitious. She and I weren't close. She called me M in that clipped tone that made it sound like an inconvenience. During Mom's final weeks, she came around more often, acting attentive. But I could feel it. The performance, the calculation. After Mom passed, Rick insisted I stay with them until things settled. I didn't argue. Part of me needed the stability. The other part didn't trust any of it. Mom's estate wasn't enormous, but it was substantial. A house fully paid off, several investment accounts, and a life insurance policy that named me as the sole beneficiary. She had set it up that way years ago, quietly, deliberately. Rick knew about the house. He also knew about the insurance. What he didn't know until recently was just how much was in the investment portfolio Mom had built over the years. And that's when things changed. Rick became more interested in my financial well-being. He started asking small questions. Do you have someone helping you manage those accounts? Do you want me to look over the documents I used to do all that for your mother? Just making sure you're protected, Emma. This world can be ruthless. I smiled, nodded, played along. Then Sophie joined in. I know it's overwhelming, Em. All this legal stuff. Maybe Dad and I can help you out just for a little while. Consolidate things, make sure no details get missed. She always spoke with that soft, condescending tone, like I was a child holding a loaded weapon and didn't know where the safety was. They were circling. I could feel it. Rick began leaving printed documents on the kitchen table. Just look them over, he'd say. Don't need to sign anything yet. One of them was a durable power of attorney form. Another was a temporary transfer of asset management agreement. I read every word, and I didn't sign a single one. Sophie started talking about selling Mom's car. It's just sitting there, she said. We could split whatever we get. I reminded her that the title was in my name. She laughed like that was a minor detail. Around that time, I noticed something strange on my laptop, an app I didn't remember installing. It ran in the background, silent, invisible unless you knew where to look. I traced it back to a system update Rick offered to do for me a few weeks earlier, just cleaning out junk files, he had said. But it wasn't junk. It was a keystroke logger. He was watching what I typed, probably trying to get passwords track where I logged in, maybe even monitor how much I really knew about the money my mother had left me. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started preparing. I made encrypted backups of all my financial data. I changed every password using two-factor authentication. I set up a decoy account with just enough information to look real. I moved the majority of the funds to a different institution with a different name one Rick didn't know. I also installed my own software: motion-triggered screen recording, webcam activation, remote data backup. I even set up a micro camera hidden in the corner of my bedroom angled perfectly at my desk, just in case he ever tried to use my laptop again. And then I waited. I kept acting the same, quiet, unassuming, tired from grief, grateful for the help. Rick seemed pleased. Sophie too. I let them think they were smarter, because if they wanted a performance, I could give them one. I started keeping notes. Every time Rick said something that didn't sit right, every time Sophie accidentally walked into my room without knocking, every little moment that would have felt paranoid if I hadn't already seen the keylogger installed on my own laptop. Things escalated slowly the way storms do quietly, and then all at once. It began with the questions. Rick started asking about my routines. When do you usually go to bed, Emma? Do you still take melatonin to help you sleep? That lavender tea working for you? They seemed casual enough, fatherly even. But the questions kept coming. He asked if I ever forgot things. Just curious, grief messes with memory. He offered to help me keep track of appointments and financial deadlines. I declined politely. He stopped pretending after that. The next shift came with Sophie. She began leaving her things in my room, a scarf on my chair, a glass on my nightstand. She claimed she'd borrowed something and forgot it, but she never borrowed anything. I moved them back to her room each time without a word. Then came the mail. Letters addressed to me but opened, slits along the top slightly uneven. The first time I thought it was an accident. By the third time I started taking photos before touching anything. One morning, I found a bank envelope on the kitchen counter. It was mine. I had never opened it. Rick was already sipping his coffee. Saw that in the mailbox. Didn't want you to miss it. I took the envelope, smiled, and walked away. My hands shook as I opened it in the privacy of my room. The contents were still there, but the fold lines were different. I had folded it once. Now it was folded twice. That night I checked my webcam software logs. The camera had been activated at 3:12 a.m. The trigger was movement at my desk, and I had been asleep. They were getting bolder. That week I noticed my bedroom door left ajar in the mornings. I always closed it at night habitually, almost ritualistically. But now it was cracked an inch or two. Nothing big. Just enough to let in doubt. Sophie started hinting at bigger plans. We could renovate the house, make it worth more. Flip it. It'd be a great fresh start for both of us. Both of us. The house wasn't hers. The house was left to me. She knew that. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation in the garage. Rick's voice was low but clear. "Don't worry about it. She's soft. Doesn't have it in her to fight back." Sophie replied with a short laugh. "She'll fold. Just give her time. Grief makes people stupid." I stood on the other side of the door, my hands clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. They thought I was weak, they thought they had time. But I had already moved everything. The house title, the investment accounts, the insurance records, all legally transferred and password protected under a trust set up with my lawyer. The only thing left in my name was the decoy investment dashboard. I even created a fake spreadsheet detailing upcoming inheritance distributions numbers that looked convincing enough to bait someone desperate. I wanted to know how far Rick would go. One night, I pretended to fall asleep on the living room couch while watching TV. At exactly 1:37 a.m., I heard footsteps creaking up the stairs. I waited. No sound from Sophie's room, no sound from the hallway. Then the soft click of my door opening. I didn't move. I waited until morning to review the footage. Rick had entered my room, stood by my desk for nearly 3 minutes, and left. He didn't touch anything, just stood there, watching, thinking. He was planning. Sophie, meanwhile, became more affectionate. She started calling me sis again, made coffee for me in the mornings, offered to help organize Mom's jewelry, saying, "I just want to make sure nothing gets misplaced." I thanked her. Then I moved the jewelry into a rented safety deposit box that afternoon. The next night, I slipped a tiny sticker under my dresser drawer. When I checked the next morning, the sticker was gone. They were searching. I let them because I was ready. Everything they thought they were doing in secret, I had already seen. They thought I was the one asleep, but I was the one watching. The most important part of any trap isn't the bait, it's letting them think they're winning. And that's exactly what I did. I started with my laptop. I uninstalled the spyware Rick had installed, but I left a decoy version in its place, one I could control. Every keystroke, every click, every file I opened was being recorded by me. I replaced the shortcut to my actual investment account with a local HTML file that mimicked the interface. It showed just enough money to make it worth stealing, but not enough to seem suspicious. I even added fake transaction history to make it feel alive. Then I bought a small wireless webcam, motion-triggered night vision, and nearly invisible. I mounted it behind the books on my shelf, angled perfectly toward my desk. I tested the footage from my phone. It worked. Every frame was clear. I installed a second camera in the hallway, hidden behind an air vent cover. That one faced my bedroom door. I wanted both perspectives, him entering and what he did once inside. Then I wrote a fake password on a sticky note. I stuck it under my keyboard drawer where I knew Rick would eventually look. The password was a decoy, but when entered, it would open the fake investment page. It also triggered a silent alert to my phone and started screen and audio recording. But traps are only half digital. The rest is human psychology. I began acting more tired. I left lights on in my room to suggest I had fallen asleep reading. I left an empty melatonin bottle near my bedside. I accidentally let Sophie see me take a sleep aid before bed. It wasn't real, just a sugar pill, but perception was everything. I even let Sophie help me log into my bank once. I pretended to struggle with two-factor authentication. She offered to manage the codes on her phone just in case I forgot again. I let her write down the code, smiled, and thanked her. Later that day, I changed the number linked to my account. I started leaving my bedroom door unlocked at night. Not because I felt safe, but because I wanted Rick to feel brave. At dinner, Rick would casually ask questions like, "You ever think about traveling, Emma? Getting away for a while? Take a break from all this grief?" I'd nod, say things like, "Maybe, I don't know if I can handle much more of this house." He smiled when I said that. He thought I was getting ready to run. One evening, I brought up the idea of selling the house. I mean, it's just a lot, I told him over dinner. Too many memories. Sophie's eyes lit up. "If you ever want to get a condo in the city, I know a great realtor." Rick poured me more wine that night. They thought they were planting seeds, but I had already finished the harvest. The final step of my setup involved a USB flash drive. It looked ordinary, but when plugged in, it automatically created a System Restore Point 1 that mirrored my fake investment folder. It also launched a hidden screen recorder that saved everything locally. I left the drive on my desk, labeled it Mom's Docs. I knew Rick wouldn't be able to resist. I coordinated everything with my lawyer. told him to be ready in case I sent him an emergency message. He already had copies of the house deed, the real investment accounts, and power of attorney records, everything ironclad, just in case they tried something legal after being caught. On a Thursday afternoon, I asked Rick if he could take a look at a leak under the kitchen sink. I needed a reason to distract him for an hour. While he was occupied, I moved the final pieces into place. I tested the camera angles. I checked the power backup on the hallway cam. I triple-checked the alert system for the screen recorder. That night, I cleaned my room. Not for me, for the recording. I wanted it to look exactly like I hadn't expected anything. I turned down the bed, set my book on the nightstand, left a glass of water beside it. Then I put in my earbuds, played soft white noise, and lay down fully clothed under the covers. But I didn't sleep. I waited. At 1:12 a.m., my hallway camera detected movement. My phone vibrated once. Then again, Rick had opened my door. I turned the brightness down on my phone and watched the live feed from the shelf cam. He entered slowly, wearing socks to dampen his steps. He moved toward the desk like he'd done it before. He sat down, pulled the chair back quietly, and leaned forward. He opened the drawer. He found the sticky note. He entered the fake password. The screen lit up. The decoy investment dashboard appeared. His eyes scanned the screen, lingering on the account balance. $382, so $750. He smiled. Then he reached for the USB, plugged it in. The screen recording triggered automatically. The webcam activated. He had no idea. He leaned closer, began clicking through tabs. Recent activity. Transfer funds. Security settings. Then he opened a notepad window, typed something. I took a screenshot. I had him. After 5 minutes, he closed everything, removed the USB, and stood up. He glanced at me. I didn't move. He turned, walked out, closed the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, I sat up. I backed up the footage to 2 different cloud accounts, sent one to my lawyer. Then I deleted the original decoy account. Tomorrow, I'd give him one last opportunity to hang himself, because sometimes the best way to expose a thief is to invite them to steal just one more time. The next day passed like any other. I made coffee. Sophie made sure to comment on how tired I looked. "You really should try those new sleep gummies I gave you," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Rick nodded, his eyes scanning me like he was already measuring my absence. "Yeah, Emma, you've been so on edge lately. Might be good to get a full night's rest. You deserve it." I smiled, slow and grateful. They wanted me sedated. They wanted me out cold. Perfect. At lunch, I told them I had a headache and might turn in early. Rick offered to make me some tea. I politely declined and made my own. When I returned to my room, I opened the tea bag, replaced it with a fresh one from my own stash, and resealed the wrapper, just in case he checked. Then I drank it in front of him. By 9:00 p.m., I was in bed. I left the door slightly ajar like I had the past several nights. My bedside lamp glowed warmly. My phone lay face down, connected to a backup battery, and recording everything through the app synced with both cameras. I pretended to doze off with my book open. At 10:47 p.m., I heard the living room TV turn off. At 11:15, the hallway creaked. Footsteps. Then silence. Sophie's bedroom door opened. Whispers. A pause. Then one set of footsteps coming back toward my room. At 11:19 p.m., the hallway camera triggered. Rick stood in the hallway in dark clothes, holding something in his hand. A phone. Maybe a flashlight. Maybe both. He paused outside my door. Waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. He stepped inside. Slow. Careful. Confident. I didn't move. He approached the desk again, just like the night before. But this time, he was faster. He plugged in the USB, opened the fake investment dashboard. But he didn't linger this time. He went straight for the transfer funds tab. I watched through slitted eyes as he leaned in, entering numbers. He selected an external account, an account name I didn't recognize, probably one he'd opened under a fake identity. He typed in $250,000, paused, then increased it to $300,000. He hesitated, changed it again. $375,000. He was greedy. Exactly what I needed. He clicked Submit. The fake website took him to a session timed out page. Rick cursed under his breath. He clicked again, tried refreshing, but the message stayed on screen. He cursed louder, then the webcam light blinked. Just once. He didn't notice. But I did. Because that blink wasn't part of my software. It was a fail-safe set to go off only if the footage was also syncing to my lawyer's secure server in real time. It was. I sat up, calm, slow. Just as Rick turned from the desk, he froze. Our eyes met. He stood perfectly still, his face halfway between guilt and rage. I reached over, turned on the bedside lamp. My face was calm. His was covered in sweat. Couldn't sleep, I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I thought I heard a noise. He said, his voice dry. In my room, I asked. With my computer open and a flash drive plugged in, he swallowed. I was going to leave you a note. About your account. Something looked wrong. I was just checking. Right, I said. Because you're so thoughtful. I stood fully awake, still in jeans and a sweater. Not pajamas, not sleepy. Rick noticed too late. You drugged my tea, I asked, stepping closer. Or was that Sophie's idea? He backed up a step. Emma, you're confused. No, I'm not. I picked up my phone, pressed a single icon on my screen. The large television in the living room connected via smart home hub blinked on. Sophie's door flew open down the hall. What's going on? She called out. Her voice stopped when she saw the TV screen. It was Rick, live, standing in my bedroom, hands frozen on my desk. Behind him, the fake investment account still glowed on the laptop. The feed was silent, but the image was crystal clear. Then I played the recorded video from the night before. The screen split, side by side, 2 nights, 2 intrusions, 2 undeniable moments of betrayal. Sophie stood there in the hallway, eyes wide. Dad, she whispered. Rick turned to her, frantic. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you were stealing from her. I said, my voice level. Rick spun back toward me. This is still my house. No, I replied. It's not. I opened the folder on my phone labeled legal, displayed the property deed signed, notarized, and transferred to my name. Sophie stared at it from the hallway, speechless. I knew what you were planning, I said. All of it, every word, every whisper, every browser history search, every keystroke. Rick's face collapsed. Emma, come on. I raised you. No, I said, my voice tightening. You tolerated me, you ignored me, you underestimated me. A beat passed. Sophie stepped backward as if physically repelled. Rick looked at her, eyes pleading. You knew I said to Sophie, didn't you? She looked at the floor. I didn't think he'd really go through with it, she mumbled. But you were going to let him. I thought. She stopped. I thought you wouldn't even notice. I laughed. Once. Sharp. You both thought that. Rick tried to walk toward me. I held up the phone. Move again and I send this to the police. He stopped. I haven't transferred anything, he said. No, I agreed. Because I built a wall between you and my real accounts months ago. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just hit record. The screen behind him now played audio. From 2 weeks ago. Rick's voice recorded from the garage. She's soft. Doesn't have it in her to fight back. Sophie's laugh. She'll fold. Just give her time. I looked at them both. Time's up. The next morning, I called for a family meeting. Rick and Sophie looked tense as we sat around the living room table. The laptop was open in front of me, the television screen behind them already set to mirror it. Rick spoke first. Look, last night was messy. Emotions were high. Let's not make it worse by involving lawyers. I didn't answer. Sophie leaned forward. Emma, we've all been through so much. Mom's passing the house, the stress, it's been a lot for everyone. Maybe we all made mistakes. Mistakes? I stared at them for a long moment before reaching for my phone. With one tap, I played the audio from the USB recording again. Rick's voice clear and unfiltered. She'll never know. Once it's transferred, we're out. She'll just think she lost access during a reset. Rick's face turned to stone. Sophie's mouth fell open. I let it play in full this time. The part where Rick laughed. The part where he listed the accounts he thought he could get into. The part where he called me gullible. Sophie looked horrified, but not surprised. I didn't know he was going to actually go that far, she said weakly. I turned to her. No, because 2 days ago you texted him a list of the accounts and told him which ones you thought I rarely checked. You want to hear that too? Her jaw clenched shut. I pulled up the screenshot of their text exchange forwarded from my backup server. It was already queued on the TV behind them. You were both in on it. Fully. Rick stood up. I won't be treated like a criminal in my own house. You mean my house, I said, which according to the deed was transferred to me the day before Mom passed. I slid the printed document across the table. Rick didn't touch it. I turned to Sophie. You knew Mom left everything to me. You had your own life, your own apartment, your own job. But you came back here to help Rick steal what wasn't his. She looked away. I didn't think she'd actually do it. She muttered. Mom wasn't impulsive, I said. She was intentional. She trusted me with everything because she knew I'd protect it, even from you. Rick laughed bitterly. What you think you've won? You think the court's going to just let you kick us out? They won't have to, I said. Because I'm not taking you to court. I'm giving you a choice. Rick narrowed his eyes. What choice? I pulled out 2 envelopes from the drawer. One is a letter from my lawyer listing the evidence and the criminal charges I can pursue: theft, fraud, computer tampering, and unauthorized access to financial systems. All backed up, digitally, physically, and remotely stored. And the other, Sophie asked, her voice flat, is a waiver agreement, I said. It says you agree to vacate the property within 72 hours, surrender any claims to the estate, and acknowledge that you knowingly attempted to access accounts that didn't belong to you. Rick stared at the table. Sophie blinked slowly. I leaned forward. Sign the second one and I won't pursue charges. I won't send the videos to the police. I won't send them to your former clients, your employers, your neighbors. Rick's head snapped up. You recorded everything. I did, I said, including the part where you both talked about how stupid I was, how easily I'd fold. Rick grabbed the waiver and stood. He didn't even ask for a pen. He just signed. Sophie stared at him. You're just giving up. Rick didn't look at her. You want to fight it? I asked Sophie. Go ahead, but if you lose, the felony charges won't disappear. She didn't move for a long time. Then slowly she signed too. I stood. That's it, I said. You have 72 hours to get your things and leave. I don't care where you go. Just not here. Rick's face was blank. Sophie's was tight with fury. They both looked smaller somehow. I picked up both waivers and folded them neatly into a folder. This is done, I said. Don't call me. Don't come back. Don't pretend we're family. No one spoke. As I turned to leave the room, Rick called out, You think you're better than us? I stopped in the doorway. No, I said. I just think I paid attention. Then I walked out. They left 2 days later. No words, no apology. Just the sound of drawers closing, bags being zipped, and the front door creaking open one final time. Rick didn't look at me on his way out. Sophie paused on the porch. For a second, I thought she might say something. Maybe one last attempt at a twisted justification. But she didn't. She just stared past me into the house she had once walked through, like she owned it, and then followed her father down the steps. I closed the door behind them, locked it. Then I stood there in the quiet. It was the first time the house had felt truly mine. I walked through every room that day, not to inspect anything, just to feel the space again, without them in it, without the weight of what they had been planning hanging in the corners. In the guest room, Sophie had left a few books on the nightstand, books she never read. One still had a receipt tucked inside, dated the same week Mom died. In Rick's old desk drawer, I found scribbled notes on my finances, password guesses, routing numbers, calculations. It didn't make me angry, it made me tired. I wasn't someone who enjoyed revenge. I didn't feel proud or triumphant. What I felt was clean, like I had taken out the garbage and could finally breathe. Later that week, I met with my lawyer one last time. We finalized a trust fund Mom had started for me, but never completed. I chose to rename it in her honor, the Helen Avery Trust. It would help young women who, like me, had been told they were too soft, too naive, too unqualified to handle their own lives. A week after Rick and Sophie left, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a check for $47. No note, no explanation. Just $47. I laughed out loud. It was so Rick, trying to leave the final word. A petty gesture meaningless in value, but loaded with spite. I burned it in the fireplace that night. By the time spring arrived, I had repainted the house, cleared the garden, replaced the locks. I found new rhythm. Coffee in the mornings, walks around the lake, a sense of peace that wasn't dramatic or loud, but steady. A few neighbors asked what had happened to Rick and Sophie. Moved out, I said. That was enough. They didn't need the story. And I didn't need to tell it. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of courtrooms or cops. Sometimes it's just being able to sit at your own table in your own home, with your own name on every document, every wall, every piece of peace you fought for, and knowing you didn't stoop to their level, you just outsmarted them, quietly, completely. 3 months later, the house felt like mine in a way it never had before. The silence was different now. Not tense or waiting, but peaceful, intentional, safe. I'd turned Mom's old sewing room into a creative studio. It wasn't fancy, just a large desk, a whiteboard, a bookshelf, and a view of the backyard. But it was mine. In that room, I started a small business helping women set up digital security systems, password protection, two-factor authentication, scam prevention. I called it Silent Net. Most of my clients were older women, widows, single moms, women going through divorce, women who had been told the internet was too complicated or that money management was for someone else to handle. They reminded me of Mom. They reminded me of who I almost became. One morning, while setting up a workshop event at the community center, I ran into Mrs. Daly, our former neighbor. "Haven't seen Rick around," she said casually. I smiled. He moved. She looked relieved. Oh, good. That was it. No details exchanged, no gossip, just a small moment of mutual understanding. Later that evening, I walked through the house slowly, the way I used to when Mom was alive. My hand brushed the banister she had polished every Sunday. My fingers tapped the cabinet she always kept the good tea in. She had been gone for 6 months, but she was still here. In the quiet courage, in the system she'd built, in the daughter she raised to pay attention even when no one thought she was. I stopped in the hallway where Rick had once stood in the shadows. For a moment, I remembered the fear, the confusion, the violation, the disbelief. But then I remembered what came after. Not rage, not revenge, just action, just clarity. In my room, I still had the 2 cameras, one tucked behind the bookshelf, one in the hallway vent. I hadn't taken them down, not out of paranoia, out of memory. They were reminders, not of what he did, but of what I did about it. A few days later, I got a text from Sophie, just one line, "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time before deleting the message. Forgiveness didn't mean I owed anyone a reply. It just meant I could finally move on. I hosted a small brunch at the house a week later. Just a few friends, some old neighbors, a couple of women from my workshops. We drank coffee on the porch and laughed about small things. Squirrels in the attic, terrible online dating someone's grandchild who had dyed their hair blue. I told none of them what had happened in this house, but I felt it underneath everything, not the pain, not even the betrayal. Just the weight of survival traded now for steadiness. I no longer had to prove I was capable. I no longer had to wait to be seen. I'd seen myself. I'd done what needed to be done. And I'd done it without yelling, without violence, without becoming like them. Later that night, I sat with a cup of tea and wrote in my journal something Mom had encouraged me to do since I was 12. I wrote one line. He thought I was asleep. Then I smiled, because I never was.